Oops. Alright, welcome everyone back to the stream. Today is day 22 of becoming a full stack developer in 8 months. And we're continuing where we left off with CSS Grid. This time we're tackling advanced grid properties. Now, I know how much of this I'm going to be able to go through in this video because in this live stream, because I only have limited time, but we'll do as much as we can. I'm still a bit sick. I just can't deal with it, it seems like. But anyways, so far you've learned how to create a grid, adjust the sizes of the tracks, and position grid elements in specific rows and columns. Right now you have all the tools you need to be able to create any kind of static grid layout. But what do you do when you want your grid to be more responsive, dynamic, or reusable? In this lesson you'll learn about some more advanced grid properties that can help you do this. So, lesson overview. This section contains a general overview of topics that you will learn in this lesson. Create multiple grid tracks more easily using the repeat function, so I think we know this already. Create grid tracks using FR units instead of explicit sizes. We've done this already. Set minimum, maximum, and ideal track size boundaries. Use auto-fit and auto-fill to create a grid with a dynamic number of rows and columns. So that seems interesting. Use auto-fit and auto-fill along with min-max to create responsive grids. Perfect. So setup. We're going to approach this lesson hands-on. Let's set up a grid with 5 columns and 2 rows and apply some styling so everything is easy to see. Now I'm wondering if I should open up the text editor and code along. But basically what they're doing is they have that grid with grid container. Each grid item has that paragraph of Odin and an image, and that's about it. Next, they style the grid container, they make it resize both, which I haven't seen, overflow, auto, display grid. They set up the gap, the padding, they set up a gray border, although I see it as blue, but I'm colorblind, so background color is sky blue. Oh, this little thing is the border, and this is the background, the blue thing. Alright, 2 rows, 2 columns. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. So it's filled up. I didn't see the horizontal scroll. Alright, grid item. We have background color, text align center, color of the text, font family, font size, nothing too interesting. Okay, in this example the HTML is pretty straightforward, but let's talk really quick about some of the CSS being used. Isn't that related to the lesson so you can understand what? But let's talk really quick about some of the CSS being used that isn't related to this lesson so you can understand why it's being used. So I get it. Grid item P, image selectors. All the properties here are to make our grid items look a bit nicer. These are relatively straightforward, so no need to dive into the specifics. Alright, so resize both, that's what I was talking about. For our container, we're obviously using display grid to render the container as a CSS grid, but the next property might be unfamiliar. You see resize both. This is a property that allows the user to resize the container by clicking and dragging from the bottom right corner. This will be beneficial to us when we start using properties that resize our grid tracks based on the size of the grid. So is this little thing that you can drag that creates like a resizable window. And you can see this in text boxes. Text boxes have this resize. Alright, so what else do we have? So we've read through this whole thing. Change zoom levels, make sure to view the CodePen examples. The CodePen embeds at 05, 025 so that there is zoom to resize the container. Can I edit it on CodePen so I don't have to? I think that will be better. But here I don't see the resize, like I saw it in the, there you go. It was really on the far right. Alright. Change zoom levels. Well, the zoom levels are available here, but if I open it from here I wouldn't need that. Okay, use overflow auto to enable scrolling if we resize the container to be smaller than our grid can accommodate. So this is the overflow, I guess. We have both horizontal and vertical overflow enabled. We use the properties gap and padding to establish a gutter area to be able to visualize the grid items better. The border and background color are included to make the container look nicer. Here we have, here is where we want to begin our focus for this lesson. In order to make 2 rows and 5 columns, we manually define each row and column's track size individually. So tedious. Okay, so maybe that wasn't that tedious, but in this case we only made 2x5 grid which can hold a total of 10 items. Imagine using this method of defining every column and row for a grid that can hold 100 of items. Enter repeat. So repeat is a CSS function available to the CSS Grid template properties that allows us to define a number of rows and columns and the size we want them to be without having to manually type out each individual track size. For example, in our step above, can be rewritten as repeat. So I guess we can do this manually and follow along. So repeat, and then we put in 2 and 150 pixels. Was that the case? And then we can delete this. And here, instead of 2, we'll set it as 5. Yep. And if it was set to 2, for example, I don't know why. Yeah, I know why. Because we have 10 items. Obviously. Okay, so 5. And we have the same grid but using the repeat, which we don't have to type 150 pixels like 10 times. Alright. Fractional units. Now that we know how to quickly create many grid tracks, it's time to learn how to start making them dynamic. Dynamic in this context means flexible or responsive in some way. The opposite of dynamic is static or fixed at a certain defined height, like 150 pixels, which we've used in the setup of this sample grid. The most basic way to make our grid items dynamic is by using fractional units, also known as FR. The FR unit is a way of distributing whatever remaining space is left in the grid. For example, if you have a 4-column grid with a total width of 400 pixels and our 4 grid items on each column track have assigned 1 FR as their size, all of the grid items should be given one fraction of that 400 pixels of space, which is 100 pixels. Let's take a look at what happens if we give our column and row tracks in the sample grid. We created a dynamic width of 1 FR instead of static width of 150 pixels. So wait, where do they add that? They do here 1 FR and 1 FR. Is it just that 1 FR? Oops, not that. 1 FR. Yeah, so they take up the whole space in our grid container. Okay. Yeah, I don't think they change anything else. Notice how all of our grid items now fill up the entire width and height of the grid. Neat, right? Now try resizing the example and see what happens. Even cooler. Yes, indeed. So because we have this resize set to both, we can now drag the grid, and as you can see, it's responsive until you make it too little height, because the images have a fixed height, and also the margins and so on, so we cannot make it like shorter than that, and we cannot make it like narrower than that. So until right about what is it, like until here it is responsive, so we can make it larger than that, but we cannot make it smaller than that. But until there, as you can see, it's pretty responsive. That's great. In this example, there is a lot of going on with our grid template columns, but take a minute to understand what is written. So wait, did they made the first two fractional units. All right. We can do that. I'll just copy this and paste in the columns. Yeah, so now as you can see, we have some items that are bigger, some that are smaller, but it's still all responsive. Okay, we continue to use the repeat function here, but this could be written in the old-fashioned way too. The key here is the first two columns are assigned 2 FR units and the remaining 3 are assigned 1 FR. This means that as the grid grows and shrinks dynamically, the space will be distributed in different amounts between these columns, specifically twice as many pixels to the first two columns as the remaining 3. Notice that when you resize, the grid items grow proportionately to how many FR units they are allocated, as mentioned above. You can also mix static units like pixels and dynamic units like FR in that repeat function. So as you can see here, we have repeat of 2 of 125 pixels and repeat 3 of 1 fractional unit. Okay. You may have noticed at this point that good luck today, my name is Xander. Thank you so much, my guy. Thank you for tuning in. Hope your day is going well. You may have noticed that at this point, when you resize the grid as large as possible, there is no limit to how large the grid items will become. However, when you resize it as small as possible, there is a distinct smallness size to the grid. It will allow the items to go. In this case, the smallest size, either the P or the image element, can be without overflowing. This breakpoint is the item's min content value. This CSS keyword is very useful, but this is beyond the scope of this lesson. For more info, check out the docs for the min content. I'll probably bookmark this because it's not that long, so we can quickly go through it. The min content sizing keyword represents the minimum intrinsic size of the content. For text content, this means that the content will take of soft wrapping opportunities, becoming as small as the longest word. In the interpolate size property and the calc size function can be used to enable animations and to and from the main content. So used as length, we can set the width to main content, inline size to main content, height and block size. Used in grid tracks, so grid template columns, we can do 200 pixels 1 FR and then min content. So if we try that quickly, let's do these 3 fractional units to be min content. and it will take the minimum amount of content. Now you're seeing it has some space on both the left and right side, and I believe this is because of the margin here that the P unit has. So if we remove this, no, it wasn't that. Maybe it's some padding here on the grid item. Yeah, it was the padding, but without it, it would take just exactly as exactly the width of the items inside of it. But yeah, that's pretty cool. We can still use 1FR. I'll remember to use this min content. Alright, they could have quickly explained it, to be honest. We learned about min and max in our previous lesson on CSS functions, but a bit of review can't hurt. Both of these functions will return a value based on the arguments you supply them. Min will return the smallest of the values you passed in, and max will return the largest. For example, min 100 pixels or 200 pixels, it will return 100 pixels every time, while max 100 and 200 pixels will return 200 every time. You can supply as many arguments to these functions as you want. Of course, it's silly to give these functions static units because the calculation is meaningless. The smallest or largest value will always be returned. In the above example, the grid rows will always have a size of 100 pixels, and the columns will always have a size of 200 let's say 500 pixels, because this is the example. But when we provide a dynamic value as one of these arguments, we unlock the real potential of these functions, especially in the context of grid. So here they are defining 2 rows and 2 columns. The rows have repeat 2 times and have the smallest amount, either the 200 pixels or the 50%, and the max has 120 pixels or 15%. In this case, the grid row size will be calculated from the values 200 pixels and 50% of the grid container's height. In real time, the browser will compare both of these values and apply whichever is the smallest to the size of our grid row. Essentially, what this tells grid is that the track size should be 50% of the grid's total vertical space, because we're defining row size, unless that number would exceed 200 pixels. Essentially, you're setting a max height for the track. Yeah. Okay. Conversely, the grid column size will be calculated based on the larger of the 2 values of the grid container's width. In doing so, we're essentially setting a minimum width of our grid column size at 220 pixels. Check out this example in here and try clicking and dragging to change the grid's dimensions to see how the grid items respond. So I'm just going to copy those 2 and paste them in here so you can see the difference. Alright, so as you can see, when I shrink and expand the grid container, the items shrink with it until they reach this point for the width, which is the minimum width, or 200 pixels. And for the height is it's too little, I cannot even see it. Alright. Dynamic minimum and maximum sizes, so min max, is a CSS function that is specifically used with grid. It can only be used with the following CSS properties. So you can only use min max when you're defining grid template columns, rows, grid auto columns, or grid auto rows. And it is where did I read neatly? It's a a relatively straightforward function that only takes in 2 arguments, the minimum size of the grid track can be and the maximum size the grid track can be. Unlike min and max, it can make sense to use static values for both arguments. Here is an example of the grid we've been using, written with min, max and some static values. So here they're repeating 1FR for the rows, but for the columns they're using a minimum of 150 pixels and maximum of 200 pixels. So if I copy this example and paste in here, the grid got a bit bigger, but we can see the difference now in the columns. As you can see, they're responsive only in this area between 150 pixels and 200 pixels, and if the size gets smaller than that, they remain 150 pixels, and if the size is bigger than that, they remain 200 pixels. So this is min max. All right. Quamp. Unlike min-max, quamp in CSS, quamp is a CSS function that can be used anywhere, not just within a grid container. As with min and max, we learned in the previous lesson. As with min and max, we learned about it in the previous lesson, but let's do a quick review. The syntax is as follows. So when you have quamp, you have a minimum size, an ideal size you want, and a maximum size. What does this allow our items to resize itself until it reaches one of the minimum or maximum threshold values? Since quamp's purpose is to create a flexibly sized track with constraints, we want to use dynamic value for the ideal size argument and typically a static size for the minimum and maximum size, although it is possible to use a dynamic value here too. And here is a non-grid example. We'll look back at our grid in a moment. So if we have a width, we can set a quamp of the minimum value of 500 pixels, maximum value of 1000 pixels, and the 80% will be 80% width of the parent container of this selected element. This element, which we can pretend is just a div, will render with a width equal to 80% of its parent's width, unless that number is lower than 500 pixels or higher than 1000 pixels, in which case it will use those numbers as its width. Okay, now back to our grid container. So we have grid template for the columns. Let me just copy that so you can just see it in action. It's always the columns that they change. Alright, so nothing really happened, but so I think this 200 pixels is the maximum size, and that's why it didn't happen. But until 150 pixels, there will be 20% of the parent's width. What happens if we say a larger value here? Yeah, it totally breaks it. What if it's just 100? Oops, not 1000, 100. Yeah, so there will be 20% of the parent's width until they reach 100 pixels. Yeah, I get it. All right. What else do we have? Notice how the tracks stay at 20% width of the container until they hit the minimum or maximum thresholds. Using quamp and min-max are fantastic methods of making grids more responsive while ensuring we don't hit critical breakpoints that make our website look bad. This is imperative when using images and elements that may have a tendency to overflow or render in undesirable ways when pushed to extreme sizes. Next we have auto fit and auto fill. These two values are actually a part of the repeat function specification, but they were served for the end of this lesson because of their usefulness. Because their usefulness is not apparent until you understand the min-max function. Here's the use case. You want to give your grid a number of columns that is flexible based on the size of the grid. For example, if your grid is only 200 pixels wide, we may only want one column. If it's 400 pixels wide, we may want two, and so on. Thankfully, autofit and autofill are here to save the day. According to the W3 specification on autofill and autofit, both of these functions will return the largest possible positive integer without the grid items overflowing their container. Here is an example. So we have an example of display grid with 1,000 pixels, and grid template columns we can repeat autofit of 200 pixels. So we'll have 200 pixel columns, and we'll have as many of them as many of these columns fit in the 1000 pixels. So we'll have 5 200 pixel columns, is I think what I'm trying to say. But if it was 900 pixels, we will only have 4. At least that's what I think. So but we can actually test it, I guess. Width is 1000 pixels. Can we say that here? I think so. If we remove the size, probably. No, that's not it. But anyways, we can set up these template columns. So they're initially to 1000 pixels. So hi there, my brother. What is up with you? Yeah, so I don't know where the width of the container is set, so that really doesn't make a difference. If we remove it, it's still based on our resize. But you can see it will fit as many as it can with the auto fit. Then what we have for this grid, we have set a width of 1000 pixels, and we're telling it to fill in our columns with tracks of 200 pixels each. As long as there is at least 5 grid items, this will result in a 5 column layout no matter what. In this case, autofill would actually do the same thing. We'll get into the difference soon. So the real magic of autofit and autofill comes when we incorporate min-max into the equation. With min-max, we can tell our grid we want to have as many columns as possible, using the constraints of our min-max function to determine each column size without it overflowing our grid. Check out how cool our grid looks when we resize it now. So I'm just going to copy this. I removed the width, so we don't need that. Let me see. Grid container, I don't need this. Recovering from the Von Lee hangover. Oh. Did you have a birthday? Because I think I forgot, sorry. Was it your birthday? No. Christians, you yeah, shit. Alright. Hopefully you had a good time. How was it? Von Lee hangover. Alright, the difference is here that they fit to the edge of the container. Before that, if you remember, when we had the we just had the auto fit without this min max, and it was 200 pixels. So if we do 200 pixels, they will not fit till the edge of the screen, but with the min max of 150 and 1 fraction, they fit till the edge of the screen. It was fine, not bad. Cool. What if it's just 1 fraction? Do we need the min max at all? Yeah, if it's 1 fraction, to just take up the whole space. And here it has to be really small to take up the whole space. Less than 150 pixels. If we do 550, it will be 1 column until it's larger than 550, and then each of the columns will be 1 fraction. Alright, cool. Notice how when we resize the columns, we automatically know how many will fit across. If you don't think that's cool, you better check your post. So what's going on here specifically with the repeat autofit min max? Remember that autofit will return the highest possible integer without overflowing the grid. So first the browser has to know how wide our grid is. In this case it's just the window's width minus the margins, because we didn't explicitly set it. For the sake of this example, let's pretend like our window is currently 500 pixels wide. Second, the browser needs to know how many grid column tracks could possibly fit in that width. To do this, it uses the minimum value of our min-max function, since that will yield the highest number of items, which is 150 pixels. Now, if our window is 500 pixels wide, this means our grid will render 3 columns. But wait, there is more. Once the browser has determined how many columns we can fit, it then resizes our column up to the maximum value allowed by our min-max function. In this case, our max size is 1 FR, so all 3 columns will be given an equal amount of the available space. As we resize our window, these calculations happen in real time, and the result is what you see in the example above. Do you know when you're coming to Plovdiv already? No, not yet, but I'm working on it. Aidin Ross. Why Aidin Ross? Alright, should be in a couple of months. We just have to sort out the employment or the unemployment. But I have to be careful speaking about this. What you're learning today, we're learning advanced CSS Grid. So we're learning about more properties and functions we can use to make our grid more responsive. So what about autofill? In most cases, autofill is going to work exactly in the same way as autofit. The difference is only noticeable when there are fewer items. They can fill up the entirety of the grid row once. When the grid is expanded to a size where another grid item could fit, but there aren't any left, autofit will keep the grid items at their max size using autofill. The grid items will snap back down to their min size once the space becomes available to add another grid item. Even if there isn't one to be rendered, they'll continue their pattern of growing to max and snapping back to their min as the grid expands and more room becomes available for new grid tracks. So I kind of understood it. Good luck, thank you so much. I kind of understood it, but I will have to take a look in practice. To see this in action, look at the following 2 examples. In the first one we have grid autofit and the second autofill, and see what happens when you resize the grid horizontally. So can we do this? Resize it horizontally. So this with the autofill and this is autofit. So autofit we have been using up until now, and just throughout the whole time it fills the screen as much as possible. As you can see, the items grow to fill the entirety of the width. And here, like, they have a how do I explain that? I'm not sure. When there is space for one more item at 150 pixels, they snap to their 150 pixels to accommodate for that another item, as you can see in here. So it works kind of in the opposite way. But if we don't have more items, it just keeps doing that, which I don't know how useful it is. I'll have to see it in a real use case example, but this seems more responsive to me. And that's about it. Congratulations, you've made it this far. You're well on your way to becoming a grid master. So in the assignments we have CSS tricks article about grid properties, and if you remember, in past streams we already discussed introduction, CSS Grid basics, and important CSS Grid terminology. So we're up to the properties, and there is quite a bit of reading here. And after that, do the exercise in our CSS exercise repository, intermediate CSS advanced grid directory. Remember that the instructions are in the readme order, and we have responsive Holy Grail and Holy Grail Mockup. Note, when doing these exercises, please use all of the documentation, so they're just saying to Google stuff. And I don't remember if you have this exact thing pulled already. I think we have like this CSS exercise, the entire thing forked, so we'll navigate through it. But first, let's read through the CSS Grid properties. So these are for the parents and these are for the children. So I'm wondering if should we read it top to bottom or left to right. Maybe top to bottom and start with the display for the parent, and then we'll move on to the grid items. So display defines the element as grid container and establishes a new grid formatting context for its contents. Values grid generates a block level grid, and inline grid generates an inline level grid. So we already know about this. Grid template, columns and rows, I think we can skip those because we know already what that is and how it works, even with the repeat and with the fractions and so on. Grid template areas, also a skip. Grid template, a shorthand for setting grid template rows, grid template columns and grid template areas in a single declaration. Sets all three properties to the initial values. Grid template rows, grid template columns. This is where you can name them, and then using like this string annotations, tell them where to be in the grid, like the areas. Yeah, as you can see, grid template areas here, grid template rows. You can name them, give it a width or height in this case actually, and then use grid template areas. So first you name it, then you tell it to span 3 times, give it 25 pixels, and then have an end. It's interesting. Column gap, row gap, also we can skip through these. Gap, grid gap. Justify items, aligns grid items along the inline row axis as opposed to align items which aligns along the block column axis. This value applies to all grid items inside the container. So it's this what it's doing. So justify item start, it aligns them to the start of the vertical axis. Grid columns ends to the end of the vertical axis. Center, for the center we can have stretch to take up the whole space. Align items is the same but horizontal. Place items says both, so this is like shorthand. Center, justify content. Sometimes the total size of your grid might be less than the size of the grid container. This could happen if all your grid items are sized with non-flexible units like px. In this case, you can set the alignment of the grid within the grid container. This property aligns the grid along the inline row axis as opposed to the align content, which aligns the grid along the block column axis. So we have value start aligns the grid to be flush with the start edge of the grid container. So this like aligns the whole grid. End aligns the grid to be flush with the end of the grid end of the grid. Oh my god! End of the edge of the aligns the grid to be flush with the end edge of the grid container. I don't know why this was so hard, to be honest. Pissed me off. We know the other values from Flexbox basically, so you can have a visual example, stretch, so on. Alright, align content. I guess this is the same but for the horizontal, yeah. Place content, so this is the shorthand. Grid auto columns, grid auto rows. Specifies the size of the implicit rows and columns that can be added to the grid. Grid auto flow. If you have grid items that you don't explicitly place on the grid, the auto placement algorithm kicks in to automatically place the items. This property controls how the auto placement algorithm works. So it is default to rows. It will make new rows as you add more items, and you can set them to columns. Dense tells the auto placement algorithm to attempt the fill in the holes earlier in the grid if smaller items come up later. Note that dense only changes the visual order of your items and might cause them to appear out of order, which is bad for accessibility. Alright, where do they use dense? They don't. Okay, and that's basically it for the parent. Let's check out the items, as I believe it will be more interesting. So we have grid column start, grid column end, grid row start, grid row end. Determines a grid item's location within the grid by referring to specific grid lines. Grid column start, grid row start is the line where the item begins, and grid column end or grid row end is the line where the item ends. So we can have values as line can be a number to refer a numbered grid line. So yeah, you can make it as grid column start like 1, and this will be the first line of the column of the grid's column lines. Span, the item will span across the provided number of grid tracks. Span with the name, the item will span across until it hits the next line with the provided name. Auto indicates auto placement, an automatic span or a default span for one. So I'm not sure how you define the auto, but anyways. So we know this already: grid column, grid row, shorthand for grid column start and grid column end. So this is pretty self-explanatory. We've done a lot of this in the CSS Grid game we did last stream. What else? Grid area gives an item a name so that it can be referenced by a template created with the grid template areas property. Alternatively, this property can be used as an event shorthand for grid column start, grid column row start, yeah, and so on and so forth. So you can have an area with the name of the item, where it starts, when the column starts, when the row ends, and when the column ends. Example, grid area, you can name it header. And you do this on the items container. Or not the items container, but the items class. So you're targeting the item when you do this grid area to give it a name. And then you can have a grid area of 1, call for start, last line, and 6, for example. And here is how they're defined. Justify self aligns a grid item inside a cell along the inline row axis, as opposed to the align self, which aligns alongside the block column axis. This value applies to a grid item inside of a single cell. So it's how you position the contents of a grid cell. And we have the same like property values from Flexbox. Align self aligns a grid item inside of a self along the block axis, so column, this for the vertical. Place self, this is for the both vertical and horizontal. So you can see first is for the vertical and then for the horizontal. So we have center in the vertical and stretch for the horizontal. It stretches through the whole horizontal width. FR units, so we already know about this. Sizing, keywords. I think this is the more interesting parts that we learned in this lesson. So when sizing rows and just 1 second. Yeah. So when sizing rows and columns, you can use all of the lengths you're used to, like pixels, rem, percent, etc. But you also have keywords. So we have min content, the minimum size of the content. Imagine a line of text like E, whatever that says. The min content is likely the width of the word, the longest word basically. Max content, the maximum size of the content. Imagine the sentence above. The max content is the length of the whole sentence. Auto, this keyword is a lot like FR units, except that they lose the fight in sizing against FR units when allocating the remaining space. Fractional units, see above, FR. So sizing functions, we have the fit content function, uses the space available but never less than the min content and never more than the max content. So it will fit the content. Pretty self-explanatory. The min-max functions does exactly what it seems like. It sets a minimum and a maximum value for what the length is able to be. This is useful for in combination with relative units, like you may want a column to only be able to shrink so far. This is extremely useful and probably what you want. Grid template columns, min max. Repeat function, we already know this. Mensury, an experimental feature of CSS Grid is Mensury layout. Know that there are lots of approaches to CSS Mensury, but mostly of them are trickery and either have major downsides or aren't what you quite expect. The spec has an official way now, and this is behind the flag in Firefox. Subgrid is an extremely useful feature of grids that allow grid items to have a grid of their own that inherits grid lines from the parent grid. So parent grid, we set a display of grid template columns, 9 columns, each one fractional unit. So we have grid item with a grid column of 2 and 7. So it if I'm correct, you have a grid inside of a grid, and this grid cell will have the same number of columns that the parent grid has, and it will position the grid item between line 2 and line 7, if I'm correct. This is only supported in Firefox right now, but it really needs to get everywhere. subgrids. Yeah, so this is kind of what it does. I'm not sure if it's still supported by Firefox only. No, I don't think so. As you can see, wait, it shows it at the top. So baseline, newly available. It is supported in all the browsers since September 2023. Across the newer browsers, I see, okay. And that is for the chat elements as well. Now, we have a bit more time. Let's try to do one of, or do the exercises. Just 1 second. Okay. So, oops, we open up the terminal and cd into repos, and what do we have here? Cd into what is it? It's code intermediate HTML CSS. How did I call this? CSS exercises, is that it? AOS advanced intermediate, cd into intermediate, and then AOS. We have advanced grid, cd into advanced grid AOS. We have 1 and 2, so we'll cd into 01 and do code dot. Okay, let me move this and placed on the left side. Let's go through the readme. For this exercise, we're going to take our Holy Grail layout from the first exercise and make it responsive. To do this, we'll simply change our fixed track sizes to be dynamic. Consider this a warm-up for the next exercise and make sure your layout is responding properly when resizing the browser window. Hence, you only need to add to the CSS selectors, use dynamic track sizes for your columns and rows, desired outcome when the browser is narrow, when the browser is stretched. Alright, so we have this when it's narrow and this when it's stretched, so we have to make it responsive basically. Okay, let's go live with this one and place it on the right hand side. Isn't this already like, I think it should, wait, let me check the desired outcome width and narrow. Isn't this done already? Like, I don't quite get it. Alright, let me check. Make this a bit shorter. Index CSS. Container, I think we have to take the code from the last exercise because yeah, we have to take in the code from the last exercise because this isn't even a grid, like this is, we have to start from the outcome of the last exercise. So let me open this and we'll just copy the code. Where is it? CSS exercises, advanced, no, it wasn't advanced, it was intermediate, and then positioning grid, go into the style and copy this. Let me just double check it first. Yeah, I think it's the same. Just have to do that. Save it. Yep. I think Have you made it responsive already? I think I have, because I used fractional units. Let me go through this self-check. Gap is 15 pixels. I'm pretty sure it's 15 pixels. Let me check. So we have a gap of 15 pixels indeed. Grid has 2 columns. Yes, it has 2 columns. Oops. It does have 2 columns. Has 4 rows. It does have 4 rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Grid tracks do not use static sizes, no pixels. Grid tracks do not use static sizes, so they don't. Okay. Second column is 3 times larger than the other. Second column is 3 times larger. Yeah, it seems like it. Or maybe I have to do it 3 FR. Is that it? Now it's 3 times larger. Okay. 4 rows. The third row is 5 times larger than the others. I think so. The columns narrow and widen as the viewport changes in size. They do. Row 3 gets taller to accommodate text wrapping as you narrow the viewport size. It does. So I think this is the solution, and we actually done it when we were doing the last exercise. I didn't want to accidentally do it, but it seems like I did. Let me check the differences. Container div. So this is the solution CSS, and it's interesting that they haven't, as you can see, I've done everything in this container, but they mention it like right here, and it's the same changes I did, but they've put it at the bottom. This is the entire solution. Yeah. So I get you. Okay, so I guess we can close this out, and we'll go on to the second exercise. So we have to cd out with ls, I think cd into 2, oops, cd to tab, and code dot. Now what do we have here? Now that you've made your Holy Grail layout responsive, we're going to have some fun making it a bit more complicated, more challenging, and adding some features. You might find this to be a bit more challenging than you expected. You might even be tempted to use Flexbox, but for the sake of this practice assignment, try to see if you can figure it out how to recreate this entire mockup using only grid. Feel free to add in your own dummy content or styling too. So, hints for this exercise: you need to add some CSS decoration blocks to the style CSS file. Look through the HTML to see what selectors and combinators you can use. Take the layout one section at a time. You don't need to add or change anything in the HTML, but it will be helpful to look through the parent and child relationships between elements. Just like with Flexbox, you can easily center an item by making it into a grid. Don't worry about the placeholder image element stretching when resizing the browser window. This will be covered in the responsive lessons. So we have desired outcome and desired outcome stretched. It says if you use the tools in the advanced grid properties lesson, you should be able to get your article cards to automatically fit the browser window as the browser window is adjusted, and we have the self-check. Let me see the styling and index desired outcome. So indeed it looks a bit more complicated. I'll open up the browser on the right hand side, have VS Code here, and we need to make it like this when it's how do you say it, when it's normal, and this when it's stretched. Okay, perfect. That seems interesting, not going to lie. I just have to take a quick break to go to the bathroom, and I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. So let's see how we're going to tackle this. They said do one section at a time and don't use flexbox. So we're not using flexbox, and I'm going to close this, open the styles, the index and the readme, and I'm going to move the index first, styles next, the readme. Okay. What do we have here? The container element has 2 columns. The container second column is 4 times larger than the first column. So it has 2 columns, 1, 2, and the second is 4 times larger. The container element has, hi, I'm late. Hey, Supreme Overload, you're not late, my brother. You actually skipped the reading, and we're going to do the exercise now, so you're here for the fun stuff. Do you like the wrench next to your name? Header element has two columns, so the header has two columns, I guess, one for the logo and one for the navigation. Container element has a gap of 4 pixels. The UL inside of the menu element contains another grid. The UL inside of the nav element contains another grid. So this whole navigation here is another grid, I can see. The sidebar element has a gap of 50 pixels. So 50 pixels gap, I think this is vertically. The text elements in this sidebar are centered with grid. The article element should set grid columns. The article element should set grid columns using repeat along with the auto fit and min max properties. The article columns should have a minimum value of 200. Alright, so the header and footer span across both columns. Alright. If you don't know, we have to recreate this using CSS Grid, and this is our starter file. Yeah, I love it, thanks man. I also have completed a landing page project and I'm beginning my JavaScript study tomorrow. I also love the Flexbox Frog game. Perfect. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Maybe link your landing page if you want, so you can check it out. But that's pretty cool, my guy. I'm so glad you're making progress. I also started working on the Discord, but it will probably take me a few more days, but that's in the works. So let's check it out. The container that holds everything, it seems like, is the flex element. So we have a header inside of it with a logo and a menu, and I guess the header will also be a grid element, but I'm not sure. We'll check this out. We have a sidebar with a photo placeholder image. And then we have 3 more boxes. We have a navigation of latest articles, most views and features. So this is right up top. It takes the second column of the global grid. Okay, so let's first start with the container. And we'll set it to this display of grid. Then we'll make grid template columns. Oh yeah, let's check it out. That's really cool. Nice. You even put in a bit extra effort to add in the images because I didn't do it. Perfect, my guy. Good job. You can put a bit more spacing between the individual items because they kind of mesh together at the moment, but do this if you want. It's just a suggestion. But yeah, everything else pretty cool. Is it? No, I don't think we've made it responsive yet. No, this is in the future lessons. But yeah, pretty cool. Nice job. I like it a lot. Cool. So how did they say that? Has 2 columns and the container second column is 4 times larger than the first column. So we'll have grid template columns and we'll have 1 FR and 4 FR. Alright, so that kind of works. And what else? The container element has a gap of 4 pixels, so we can set in a gap of 4 pixels. Okay. Container element, the header element has 2 columns, so header also has to be a grid and must have 2 columns. Now, are the columns equal in size? I don't think so. Grid template columns. Can I say 2? No, I don't think so. I'll do it in a bit, but can I say 1? Can I say let's first position it, I guess. And how was that done? Grid column, and you set it as 1 and -1, and this will make the header span across the whole width. Now can I do this to make it 2 columns? No, I'll have to specify the width of each column. Oops. So something like that, 1 FR, 3 FR. That looks more like it. The UL inside of the menu element contains another grid. So where is it? Menu. We'll have to make menu UL li. Can we make this a display grid? Yes, that actually gets rid of the little dots we have, or the decoration, and I thought we'll have to make this manually, but when you make it display grid, it gets rid of them. That's pretty cool. And we can say grid template columns of 1 FR. We can actually do a repeat 4, because we have 4 items there and 1 FR each. That looks kind of alright, but they need to be. I'm wondering if that's because no. We'll maybe have to set them to max content, or what was the keyword? Max content. Alright, so this will do it. But now no, this is not it. I think some value like min max will have to use. Let me make that small again. So how do we do this? Let me try min max and do like 100 pixels and pixels, 200 pixels. Do 400 pixels. Let me inspect it and see why the text is not taking up the whole. We'll probably have to target the li in some ways, the list item. Alright, so wait, can we do just dot menu li, and can we say here width of this item to be min max of I'm not sure if we can use min max here, but let's try. Min content, actually min content, I don't believe we can use here. Max content, I don't think we can. Make the width 100% then, 100%. And remove this, do it 1 FR. No. I need to have it on one line, the whole header, link 1 and so on. Is it display block? Yeah, it is display block. Alright. And if they get smaller, yeah, it still works okay. Now the thing is, they are not centered like vertically, as you can see. So this is like the menu that is a grid, and what was the property? Make grid children center vertically. It was either align items or what was it? How to say inside of a grid layout, duplicate, align items center. Let's try this. Okay. Here we'll have to make align items center. That didn't work. Align items center. Is it because of the display block that they have like some height that we cannot change? Wait. No, this is the list element, it doesn't have that height. UL. The UL has to be centered inside of this menu. So, wait. I think we have to target just the menu in that case. Let's see how that works. It doesn't quite work. Now why is that? I think I know why. Because inside the header we made the menu like a grid, but the UL actually needs to be a grid because it has the 4 items, and we have to center the UL vertically inside of the menu. So we leave it as is, but the align items we put it on the menu instead. And let's see if that will fix it. I don't think it did actually. No. Let me see. The menu. Styles. Display block. Display inline block. Would that fix anything? No. Alright, for now I'm not going to bother, and we'll change it later. This is kind of what they wanted. It's just I don't have those legs centered, and it pisses me off at this point, so I'm just going to leave it for later. Let's see what else we have to do. If we look at the desired outcome, let's take a look at this navigation here. It's pretty simple. Again, a class of nav with an unordered list and list items inside of it. Do we have anything for that? Yes, we have nav UL and nav list, so we can already copy this, and we have 3 nav items, so go inside of the nav, make this grid repeated 3 times, and no, we shouldn't have done that. Or actually we have to set the, wait, why is that doing it? Display grid. Okay, does the nav have to be a display grid? With this, no, doesn't seem like it. Repeat it 3 times. Grid template columns. Most featured. Nav UL only, because it's a different targeting. Alright, this works. And do dot nav li and then do display of bulk. So this kind of works now, just the height is a little bit more than we wanted. Can we set the height here of oh, someone subscribed, thank you so much, 400 subscribers, yay, let's go, thank you so much, whoever subscribed. I think let's position the other items first and then worry about this. So we have the sidebar, let's make the footer span throughout the whole thing. So where is the footer? It should be grid column from 1 to -1, so it spans through the entire thing. Now this article should be from 1 2 till -1. What is the article? Yay, 400 subscribers. Grid column from 2 to -1, and this sidebar now needs to be how do we make the sidebar span the whole thing, since we didn't make rows, we just made columns, if I'm correct. Grid template columns, yeah. Let me put it on full screen and inspect the grid. We do have columns, and I think there are implicit, so we can start from I mean rows, not columns, but we can start from row 1 or 2, actually row line 2, and make it till row line 4, so from 2 to 4. For the sidebar grid row from 2 till 4. Alright, and that's the basic positioning. This also fixed the navigation up top, so that's why I wanted to first sort out where everything goes, then start changing the height and so on. Let's give it time. We're gonna reach 1 million and above. Wow, hopefully that would be great. Wouldn't it? 1 million subscribers. I cannot even imagine it at this point, to be honest, but if we keep going, everything's possible. Alright, what else do we need to do? Let's look at the readme. Grid item, the sidebar element has a gap of 50 pixels. So let's go to the sidebar. What is that? Sidebar, and do a gap of 50 pixels. Not 5 pixels, 50 pixels. And nothing really happens, but what else do we have to do? Text elements in the sidebars are centered with the grid. Text elements inside the sidebar. I guess we should make the are centered with the grid. What do they mean? Text elements in the sidebar are centered with the grid. I'm not exactly sure, and I'm not sure if that's the gap they're referring to for 50 pixels. Let me see the sidebar. Sidebar, div class photo, and we have site content. Sidebar by default is not a grid item. Should we do like justify content stretch, or what was it, align item stretch? No, align content. Yeah, I'm not sure. We'll look at it later. Let's try to fix up the article. So the article needs to be in this grid fashion, where each article has a title, a p tag, and it's in its own grid, and we have a 3x4 grid. Let's see the constraints. Article element should set grid columns using repeat. Alright, so where is the article? We have it right at the bottom. Article, let's check the structure. This is the one containing everything, so we set it as display grid, but I think it should be on top of the grid column. Display grid. We have grid template columns. We have what was it, four columns, yeah. So repeat 4. We'll do it one fr for now, and we'll do it with the other properties in a bit. Is this enough? I think this is enough. They don't tell us how many rows to set. Maybe I also have to look at the stretched. Yeah, it is just whatever fits, so we don't have to set fixed rows, just columns. And we have to use auto fit and min max properties. So instead of 4, we actually say auto fit and we should use min max. The article column should have a minimum value of 200 pixels and maximum of 1 FR unit. So do auto fit, and here do min max of, what was it, 250 pixels and 1 fractional unit. So we can delete this. No, and there we kind of have it, I guess. Let me stretch it out a bit. Yeah, I think it kind of looks like it. Let's see, should have some gap probably also. The article column should have a minimum value of 200 pixels. Yeah, we've gone through it. The article element has a gap of 15 pixels, so here we can do gap 15 15 pixels, and that makes it look a lot nicer. The cart elements inside of the article container have a height of 200 pixels. The cart elements, so quas cart, we should make a new cart, and then height of 200 pixels. So this is done. What else? The cart elements inside the article container have a height of 200 pixels. The header and footer span across both columns. This one we've done it, so I'm going to delete everything that we've done out of here. The sidebar only spans across the first column. I think this is done, yeah. Sidebar is only in the first column. The nav and article elements only span across the second column. We do have that done. The elements inside of the article container, this is done. The gap is done. The container element has 2 columns. The container second column is 4 times larger. That is the case. The container element has a gap of 4 pixels. We done that as well. The header element has 2 columns. The header element does have 2 columns. Now I'm not sure what size there should be, but header does have 2 columns. The UL inside the menu element contains another grid, so only the UL they're saying, and I think I did the grid on both the UL and the LI, so maybe I can remove this grid from here, from the menu first. Let me do it from the menu first. Remove it here and do it on the menu UL. So display block, menu UL. Alright, so that doesn't quite work out, does it? Display block, is it because of that? Let me remove that. No, it is not because of that. Menu UL. It is strange because, let me take a look at it. The menu UL should be a display block, but it is not. It is. Did I set it as display block? No, I've set it as it has to be. We missed the dot. Silly me. But that works out. Let's give it time. We're gonna reach. Yeah, sorry. Read that comment again. But anyways, I just misspelled it. What if we bring back dot menu li to display block? Do we need that? We don't need that, but I think we can just make text decoration and none. No. What was it? List styling, list style none. Yeah, this was it. So list style none. Here we can take that and do the same for the nav. So instead of menu, we'll just do nav and dot nav. Oops, just nav. Here we can remove this from here and repeat 3 instead of 4. So yeah, this gives us exactly the same result, but it's exactly as they wanted it as per description. So the UL contains another grid, so we can get rid of that. The sidebar element has a gap of 50 pixels, so I think we've done that already. Quas sidebar, if we go to it, where is it? Sidebar. There you go, has a gap of 50 pixels, so we've done that as well. The elements in the sidebar are centered with grid. They're centered with grid, I think, and also the article element should set grid columns, so on. I think this is the article column should have a minimum value of 200 pixels. I think this is all done. We just have to figure out the sidebar and then figure out how to center these right here. But other than that, we're mostly done. Now let me check the sidebar. The sidebar, I'm wondering if it should have a display grid display of grid as well, since we're using gap of 15 pixels, and I don't think it works if the sidebar is not display grid as well. So display grid, and yeah, that fixes it, I think. Now let's go back to the thing that bothers me here, the navigation here, class of menu. The UL should be centered inside that menu. So how do we center? How to center UL inside div with CSS Grid? To center an element using CSS Grid, you need to apply the CSS property to the parent container and the child element. For the parent container, you need to set display to grid, and for the child element, you need to set margin property to auto. Text align center to parent UL. Yeah, but this for the horizontal centering, I want to vertically center it. And text align center, it depends on what you mean by centered. In order to center the entire list, you can do something like, no, CSS Grid centering. So it's either justify content. I need it horizontally, so justify item center, align item center. Let me try both of these and we'll see which one works. Let me close this, and it was the menu with display grid, so we can align items center, justify item center. We do it on the UL. We actually have to make it on the menu, align item center. But for this, do we have to make the menu a grid item as well? I don't think I need this. No, that doesn't work. I mean, the justify items works, but I don't need that. I want, seems like I want the align items to be centered on the menu. But for that to work, I think the menu has to be a grid as well, and it is not. So maybe set a margin of auto, margin top and bottom of auto to the UL, so we can remove that and set. Okay, what happens if we set margin to auto first? Alright, so this doesn't center it, and if we set margin top to auto and margin bottom, this still doesn't center it, I don't think. No. let me copy, where is it? Copy element and go to ChatGPT. How to center the UL vertically inside the menu using not using flexbox. To center the UL inside the menu without using flexbox, you can use the position property combined with top, bottom, and transform. HTML unchanged. Can you do it with CSS Grid? So it says the menu to grid, but I think it will mess up the order of the items. He just says display grid, place items center. Place items center. So let's do that. Get rid of these. Do dot menu and then make the grid item and place items in the center. Kind of works actually. Can we actually do align items center? Yeah. So this was the correct thing to do all along. I just didn't want to set the display grid to the menu item, thinking that the whole UL will go into one of the 4 columns, but in this case we haven't explicitly made any column, so it will be good. It is a grid, but it only has 1 column, no 1 row, 1 column. So this looks fine. Now I can see the footer right here, but when I don't know how to fix it though, because when I inspect the element, everything just gets wait, can I zoom out of it? No, everything shrinks, so it doesn't show me that space underneath, but I think that's the right way to do it, because as you can see in the stretched version, let me show the desired outcome stretched. It looks much like the one we have. So here is the stretched version, here is ours. I think it is the exact same thing that they want. And when we go into 100%, and the desired outcome just looks exactly like it, but they did it on a smaller screen, so I think it's good enough. So I'm just going to commit that. Let me open up the terminal, and I'm quickly going to do git cd out of it. OS, where am I? Okay. Git status, yeah, everything is here. Git add o, and git commit. Did the rest of the exercises provided by the Odin project. Close this out, and we can push it. Git push. Perfect. So we're done with that. We're done with the exercises. They were pretty nice. I like them. We can close this out, this one as well. So we're done with the assignments. and we have additional resources here, but I don't have any more time today, so if either I'm going to read through them tomorrow on stream or off stream today. So that was it for today. Thank you all for watching and for supporting me, and tomorrow we're continuing. Why don't you run your git commands in the integrated terminal in VS Code? I tend to prefer that when I'm coding, since I don't leave the code either. I don't know. I think, no, I don't know, I'm just more used to it because I can just Control Alt T and it pops up the terminal. But you are right, I could maybe use the terminal in VS Code. The thing is, I start to work in this terminal because I don't open up VS Code like through the Explorer, but I type code dot in the desired folder and it opens that folder in VS Code. And when I want to move out of it, I can just do cd dot dot and just navigate to a different folder, and that's like the place where I'm starting from, so like I'm just used to do everything from there. But yeah, you can definitely use VS Code's terminal. I think it's just personal preference. But yeah, thank you for your time, guys. That was the stream for today. Tomorrow we're continuing even stronger, so stay tuned for that, and until next time, love you all, bye bye.